Hello friends, this is Growl. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know on how to play Mistweaver in 9.1 Mythic Plus. This video is going to be basic and mostly just cover my choices and why I do what I do. It'll also cover everything that I've learned playing Mistweaver over the first season of Shadowlands. In this way, I hope it'll be helpful to those who are just picking up the spec for the first time, as well as returning players looking to figure out what's going on with the patch. I've definitely neglected my poor Mistweaver quite a bit, and I've recently just started playing it a lot again in some keys anywhere from 14s and 15s to all the way up to 20s and 21s. And I'll say that even though my gear isn't that good, it feels really fun. I've been really enjoying this class. I think it's actually really underrated as a healer, and even though it isn't the best healer for sure, it definitely gets the job done. In a lot of situations, it can even be better than a paladin or a shaman. I do also make tons of other stuff like video reviews on this channel, as well as stream high keys, so don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and go follow my Twitch. I'll leave links to all that stuff, as well as my weak auras and UI stuff that you'll find from me in the description. So let's get started. A bit under the weather today, apologize for that, hopefully it doesn't sound too bad. So Mistweaver is... originally didn't really feel like it had a place, and the fist weaving never really felt great, so it was just kind of like a turret healer that would end up costing a lot of mana. It's almost like a worse holy priest. But ever since the introduction of the ancient teachings of the monastery legendary, it really sort of brought back, at least in my eyes, the whole idea of mostly DPSing and doing some healing on the side. And in my opinion, in dungeons, it actually feels really good. I think it feels similar to Holy Paladin in a way where you're in melee, you're DPSing. The big differences between Mistweaver and Holy Pally is that Mistweaver isn't quite as brutally offensive as Holy Pally is. You know, Holy Paladin is a plate healer. It does more damage. It has stronger cooldowns. However, the nice thing about Mistweaver is that it's actually a pretty dang good healer outside of melee. You know, Holy Paladin, when you pull a Holy Paladin away from the mobs, it's going to have a hard time healing. You know, when you can't Crusader Strike and you can't, like, Holy Paladin is not a ranged healer. But Mistweaver can actually blast single target healing and a little bit of AoE as well when you're far away. So in that sense, I think that even for a beginner player who wants to play a melee healer, I think I would recommend a Mistweaver over a Holy Paladin, in generally speaking. I feel like it's just more flexible. So in 9.1, Mistweaver has received the damage buff, and because we're almost always running Ancient Teachings, which is converting some of our damage into healing, it's a damage and healing buff, right? Which is great. Also, there's been a little bit of mana cost reduction. I've heard a lot of people talking about how Mistweaver is really mana starved. I didn't really find that to be the case when I was playing Mistweaver. Generally, I think that that's people underutilizing their offensive abilities and their fist weaving and overspending their casting abilities. I would almost see it as a positive element in Mistweaver that you can spend a bunch of mana and do a bunch of healing quick. You know, again, going back to Holy Paladin, you can't really dump your mana as a Holy Paladin to do a lot of healing. But in Mistweaver, in an emergency, you can throw out Essence Font, you can throw out Enveloping Mist, pump Big Vivifies, and actually do quite a bit of healing. It will cost you mana though, so you have to use it sparingly. So for race, my guy is a panda. I don't think race really matters too much. If you're really trying to min-max, I'd say probably Dwarf for Alliance or Blood Elf for Horde. But again, you know, race doesn't really matter. If you want to be a panda in full BFA gear, do it. Follow your heart, you know. For stat priority, I think it's going to be a little different from person to person. So this is what I would recommend. Keep pumping haste. Get more and more haste until you feel a point where either your heals are feeling really weak or you're starting to run out of mana. And then in that situation, start leaning more towards crit and verse. And, you know, probably a slight priority over crit, but it's not a big difference. So depending on exactly what your playstyle is, you know, you may run out of mana earlier or later, depending on the groups that you play in and whatever. I think in some like really high-end groups, you might see some Mistweavers going really high haste, like 25-30%. But I think for a lot of casual players or people who are less experienced, or if your team is zoo animals, you're going to run out of mana really quick, and your heals will maybe feel a little bit less potent. So maybe somewhere around the 15 to 20% haste level might feel better. Mastery for Mistweaver is actually a really good healing stat. The main issue is that it doesn't really help your damage that much. So my advice to you would be, as you're starting off, I wouldn't really worry about stats so much. I would just mainly look for stuff that's high item level. But as you start to progress and you start to get more confident and you start to get further in, you may want to start weaning away from mastery and trying to pump your haste a little bit, or your crit and your verse, and just try and lower down the mastery just so you can be doing a little bit more damage in keys. So trinkets are a bit hard. You can see my Mistweaver struggled quite a bit with trinkets this season. The first go-to that I would recommend is from Mists of Tyrannus Scythe. It is the Changeling. Changeling is a great stat stick. You can convert it to haste, or I mean crit or haste, whichever you want. It's a great trinket for that. So there's some good new raid trinkets. So a couple that I've been looking at, one for sure I think that'll be good is the Titanic Ocular Gland. This is just going to give you a bunch of crit when you're high health, which will be hopefully often. I think this is going to be a good trinket if you can get a hold of it. Another one that apparently is good as this one. However, the Carved Ivory Keepsake only does healing. So again, it might not be the go-to for Mythic Plus, although it'll do some good healing if you can get your hands on it. If you can't get a hold of raid trinkets, another option would be an unused dungeon trinket. Either the Ruby from Theater of Pain or the Quantum Device from the other side. Using these trinkets in combination with your Chi-Ji, or just in general when you need big healing, it's going to boost that even more, and it's going to turn it into a really, really strong cooldown. And since that's basically all you got, having it on use for that is going to feel kind of nice. So for enchants, pretty standard. You want a stamina and leech or avoidance cape. Usually I use avoidance, but I happen to have leech on this guy. Plus 30 stats on your chest, 15 intellect on your bracers. And again, I already talked about stats, so that'll be, you know, ideally you go towards haste, and then as you feel like you're starting to run out of mana or you want some more potency, you can go towards crit, and you want celestial guidance on your weapon. For consumables, hopefully I have all of them on my Mistweaver here. You want Shadow Core Oil, just give you a little bit of damage boost. Spectral Flask of Power for a flask. Armor kits. I don't have any potions, but you can use... I would probably use Phantom Fire potions if you're using Shadow Core just for a little bit more damage. And you also have the Augment runes as well. Again, usually don't use those, but you can in a very high key, or if you're trying to impress somebody. Also for food, ideally you just have the feasts that give you intellect, but because those are expensive, you can also just use like the crown roasts that give you the haste buff. So I talked about the legendary a lot, Ancient Teachings. This is probably what I'd recommend for all forms of content. It is fun to play, it's strong, it's a good mix of healing and damage. Overall, a really good Lego. Basically, you cast Essence Font, then as soon as your cast ends, you get a buff, and then every time you use your DPS single target abilities, Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, or Rising Sun Kick, it heals somebody nearby. An important thing to consider is that the range is only 20 yards. So very often you'll have a situation where you have a hunter that's out in Narnia that, you know, isn't really getting your healing. So you're going to need to either A, spot heal them, or sometimes I'll like shift around on the mobs. Like for example, let's say my hunter's over here on the left. I might kind of come around here and then try, and that way if I'm doing any fist weaving, I'll try and like inch over this way to try and make sure I grab them and be hitting the mobs there. But other than that, that's just something you have to consider, especially in pugs. A lot of the times 20-yard range on an ability is not very much. So your casting range is 40 yards. So think of it as half of your casting range is how far those Ancient Teachings heals are going. Another option, if you're really, really against the fist weaving playstyle, if you just want to be a caster, you can make Tear of the Morning. Tear of the Morning is a really, really good healing Lego. However, just fun-wise and damage-wise, I think Ancient Teachings is going to beat it out. So if you really want to, you can make Tear. It is an option. I think all the new Covenant Legos don't look too exciting. I might be wrong on those, but I don't really see any reason to run any of the Covenant Legos. So for Covenants, you have two options. I'm going to actually pull up my Soulbind calculator here. So you have two options. Kyrian is going to be the defensive option. Kyrian, your ability Weapons of Order, you just press it, gives you a bunch of mastery. Mastery doesn't do great for healing, but it's really good for damage. It also turns your Essence Font into a little bit of an AoE heal, which you're pressing all the time from Ancient Teachings anyway. For Soulbinds and Kyrian, I would run through Kalea. You get a lot of really nice crit buffs here. You have Lithopath as well as Pointed Courage. Then the two potencies I would run are Strike with Clarity or not Rising Sun Revival. I would run Resplendent Mist. And okay, it doesn't want to put it on there, but I would run Resplendent Mist and Strike with Clarity. Those are just generally your two best potencies for Mistweaver. Honestly, all the finesse and the endurance conduits are a little bit underwhelming to me. I don't really see that much use out of them. You can see in this tree, I just threw like 3 different endurance ones on there. Ultimately, they won't make that much of a difference. You can just pick these based off of what abilities you like to use or that you think are good. And for Necrolord, which is, I would say, the more offensive option, if you're looking for a more healing-focused playstyle, then you would play Kyrian. If you're looking for a more offensive damage-focused playstyle, you want to play Necrolord. Bone Dust Brew is nice because it does damage. You can put it on enemies, you can deal damage, it deals more damage. However, it's a little bit clunky for healing. The range of this is really small. I didn't really like it for healing. One of the nice things about Mistweaver is you don't need everyone stacked up to heal. All of your heals just kind of spread out and do their thing. And needing your team to come together to use Bone Dust Brew feels clunky. So generally, I'm only using this ability on like myself, the tank, and the mobs. And if, you know, maybe there's other melee in range, but so keep in mind, Bone Dust Brew is going to be nice for dealing damage, but it's going to be worst for healing. But Mistweaver is a great healer, and I don't really think you need your Covenant ability to heal. And I think most high-key Mistweavers are probably going to play Necrolord. So I would take the Emony tree. I'm not 100% sure on this. I haven't got to do too much testing with Necrolord, but I would be taking the Emony tree, and I would just be taking this path all the way down with all the potencies. So we still have, we have Resplendent Mist and our Covenant one again. The third potency I would take, I guess, is going to be Jade Bond. This makes your Crane a little bit stronger, gives it a shorter CD just slightly, which, you know, is okay. And then again, I'm just taking some random endurance and finesse conduits, whatever I see fit. So again, Kyrian for a more healing focused, Necrolord for a little bit more damage focused. So for talents, I've kind of found one setup that I like, that I run most of the time. There's not really too much deviating that I do here in keys. Miswrap is boost your enveloping mist. Both of these other talents aren't great. Tiger's Lust, really, really good utility. Chi Torpedo is definitely really fun to use, but I think generally speaking in dungeons, you should be using Tiger's Lust. Manatee, I think, is the go-to here. You might see some people encouraging either of these other talents. I think they're fine. In my opinion, in dungeons, Manatee is going to be the best bang for your buck, and it's going to be the most efficient, and we'll talk about in the rotation section why. In this row, I'm always taking Ring of Peace. Ring of Peace is just super, super powerful in Mythic Plus. In this row, as a default, I generally take Diffuse Magic. If you're unfamiliar with dungeons, if you're brand new, you can take Dampen Harm. The difference is that Diffuse Magic is better, but it only works on magic abilities. So if you don't know what the hell what's going on, you don't know what's magic and what's not magic, you know, you may just want to press Dampen Harm, and then that way you know it's going to work for everything. But Diffuse is going to be 60% DR against magic, whereas Dampen is going to be 20 to 50%. So just keep that in mind. In this row, I'm always taking Chi-Ji. Jade Statue got nerfed quite a bit. It only lasts 7 seconds now. And Jadewind, okay to use sometimes, I guess. But as Chi-Ji is like basically our only good cooldown for Mythic Plus. So we definitely need that. And we can take Rising Mist in this row too. Being able to extend your Renewing Mist and your Essence Font feels great. It actually does a fair bit of healing as well. Let's see if I can... I was doing... so. Okay, here's an overall too. We can look at this just for data. This is a pretty typical overall. This is a theater plus 20, I think. And you can see that Ancient Teachings doing a bunch of healing here, about 30% of my overall healing. Then the rest of my healing comes from my Gust of Mist, my Essence Font, my Renewing Mist. You can even see Rising Mist doing a nice chunk of healing there. So this is, and then here's my damage breakdown as well. Again, my damage not super high. My gear isn't great, but you know, we don't have too many damaging abilities here. Okay, so let's talk about rotation. So Mistweaver is about maintaining your hots and then mostly just doing DPS, right? So your 2 hots that you want to maintain, Renewing Mist, keep using Renewing Mist on cooldown. You're going to have 2 charges. If you have Thunder Focus T, it might be a good idea to pair Thunder Focus T with Renewing Mist as well, just to make it last longer. And then we're just dealing damage. So the priority is very, very simple. The first thing that you do when you go into a pack, you want to damage all the mobs. Crane Kick is good for that. Remember, it only hits 5 targets, so if it's a huge pack, you may want to move around a little bit. Make sure you spread the love. Then our priority is simply Rising Sun Kick, then Blackout Kick, then Tiger Palm, and then Blackout Kick. Eventually, a Blackout Kick may reset your Rising Sun Kick, and then you use Rising Sun Kick again, and you just keep maintaining Essence Font, renewing Miss, and then DPSing. Pretty simple. Now, sometimes, let's say you're dealing damage, you're doing your fist weaving, and that isn't enough. Either because A, there's maybe swirlies on the ground and you need to step back, or someone on your team is taking really heavy damage, right? The go-to right away is you start channeling your Soothing Mist, then you can press Enveloping first to boost the healing, and then you're just cranking Vivifies until they're full health. Now, one change that I didn't mention in 9.1 is that you can cast both Mana Tea and Thunder Focus Tea while you're channeling Essence Font. So let's say you step back, you use your Soothing Mist, then you realize that they need a lot of help. You can press your Mana Tea, then press your Enveloping, and then start cranking Vivifies, and it's going to be really mana efficient. So you can see now how Mana Tea and the rotation fits in really well. Most of the time you're just in here, you're using your Renewing Mist and your Essence Font, you're dealing DPS, then maybe something happens or someone is in danger, you might step back or you can even roll out or do whatever. Then you just pop your Mana Tea, press Soothing Mist, and then start cranking them with heals. Eventually the situation starts to stabilize, then we can get our Renewing Mist up, our Enveloping, and then we just go right back to DPS. Generally, I'm trying to use my Thunder Focus Tea on my Rising Sun Kick, just because Rising Sun Kick is good at both extending HOTS, dealing damage, does good healing, so that's the button that we want to use it on. We can also use it on Renewing Mist. I think that's totally fine too, just making it last longer. Keeping your Renewing Mist and your Essence Font up is going to do a bunch of healing in the dungeon as well. And in an emergency, you can also use it on Enveloping or Vivify. Using it on Enveloping just gives it a little bit of heal. You know, if you're worried that someone's going to die while you're channeling while you're using your Enveloping here, you can use your Thunder Focus on it just to give it a little bit of healing. And using your Thunder Focus on Vivify just saves you mana. And if it's a situation where you're starting to run low on mana, you're getting worried, there's that. So now let's talk about Crane. So the way Crane is going to work is you're going to throw out the bird. Every 3 single target DPS abilities, so only, sorry, let me rephrase that. Every 3 non-Tiger Palm abilities, so either Blackout Kick, Rising Sun Kick, or Spinning Crane Kick, not Tiger Palm, will give you a charge. Every 3 charges, you get an instant cast Enveloping Mist. So the goal when using Crane is we're going to use Crane, we're going to hit 3 times, and then we're going to use our free Enveloping. Hit 3 more times, use free Enveloping, and we're just going to keep doing that over and over again on whoever is in danger. One thing you can do is use a couple Tiger Palms early to build up stacks of your Teaching of the Monastery. Then we'll pop our Crane. We'll immediately use Blackout Kick. That's going to give us 3 stacks here. We'll throw out that Enveloping. So our general rotation is going to be Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, then Blackout Kick. That's going to give us 3. Then we'll use our free one. Then if it doesn't reset, we'll use 2 Tiger Palms and then a Blackout Kick. That's going to give us 3. Another one. Then we go Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, Blackout, and then we go another one. And now you can see with more haste how you can be really potent during this GG. The more haste you have, the more DPS abilities you're using, the more Enveloping Mist you're throwing out, and that's going to do a ton of healing, especially if you have a little bit of mastery or you have some mastery Soulbinds. Generally speaking, with Kyrian, I find that using Weapon of Order with Chi-Ji is a little bit overkill. Chi-Ji does a lot of healing as is, and I feel like it's not really necessary. However, if let's say there's a situation where, there's 30 more seconds left and it's tons and tons of damage and you need a lot of help, you may as well pop your Weapons of Order with it anyway. Just gonna, if you know that the fight is only gonna last 30 seconds and you can use both of these back to back, it's fine. And last, I want to talk about utility. So Mistweaver doesn't have an interrupt, but one thing that's really nice about Mistweaver is you have a lot of really fast stops on mobs. You have 3 different ones. You have Ring of Peace, which I don't think these guys will get Ring of Peace, but just pretend they did. Ring of Peace can be used to both group mobs, keep mobs away from the tank, interrupt mobs if they're using an ability, push them out of Sanguine or anything like that. Ring of Peace is a really, really super good ability, and your use of Ring of Peace will definitely be noticed in groups. You know, again, as a Mistweaver, you may feel like, oh, I'm not a Holy Paladin, I'm not a shaman, no one wants to invite me. Using these good Mistweaver specific abilities is what's going to get you invited into keys. Another thing is your leg sweep and your para. So what I like to do is I like to set a target on focus that I may need to para to interrupt going into the pull. Remember, I don't have a kick, but what you can do is just use your para. That'll stop the mob. If it's in combat, right, it'll immediately just get broken by something. You won't even have to worry about, you know, trolling or doing anything with it at all. It's just a quick little stop. Let's say there's a bunch of mobs and you need to stop. That's when you pull out the leg sweep. You can stun all of them. It's pretty good stun, actually. Lasts for 3 seconds. You can use it to interrupt stuff. You can use it to help protect the tank or keep mobs in place. You know, one really common situation, let's say you're in here fist weaving, you realize your tank is in trouble and he's going to have to run away. Instead of, you know, oh, let me try and heal him, he's probably going to run away anyway because he knows he's in trouble. And there may be some blizzards or some earthquakes and you want to keep these mobs in there. Throwing down a leg sweep on all the mobs in that AoE, keeping them in all that AoE, and then as soon as they start running, then you drop the Ring of Peace and you keep them in that spot. It makes your DPS's life so much better. And again, I just want to stress that a lot, that if you're a Mistweaver and you feel like, oh, I don't have this or I don't have that a Holy Paladin or a Shaman has, you have to use the things that you're given to not just, you know, do well in the key, but also be noticed by your team, right? A lot of people think, oh, as a Mistweaver, I got to try and do a lot of huge damage to get noticed. It's like, as a Mistweaver, look, you're not going to do that much damage, or you're going to do, if you do half the tank's damage, you're lucky, you know? Really what you need to do is do things to benefit your team, you know? There's no button that you're going to press that's going to do crazy amounts of damage on the mobs, but if you leg sweep everything in a bunch of AoEs and then you drop a Ring of Peace to keep everything in the AoEs, that's when it's like, oh yeah, now you're, it might not, you know, you might not see it on the meters, but you can sleep well at night knowing that you helped contribute to the success of the key. And that wraps up everything I mostly wanted to talk about Mistweaver. Again, this is mostly introductory. I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the choices I make and some of the things I think about when I'm doing keys, and also just some advice on using your abilities and whatnot. So if you guys have any questions or any tips that you want to give to fellow Mistweavers, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and happy keying, friends.